It's yours.
Okay, so my takeaway is that my bio is too long, but thank you for the intro, and I'm happy to be here. So I want to keep this conversation, because of our size, pretty informal. I have various slides that kind of talk about purpose and corporate responsibility, but really want to make sure that you get out everything. Hi there. That you want to get out of the conversation and really keep it very interactive. So we did some brief intros, and hearing that you're studying PR, which is often associated with media and internal communications, stakeholder communications. But purpose is one area that is under the PR and marketing landscape that people know of. You, of course, I'm sure have heard of finding your personal purpose. But what does corporate purpose and brand purpose really mean? And because this industry that I've been in for the past 7 years is so vast, I'm going to present the high level, 1,000-foot view, some tactics and strategies that we use in the industry, and then some best-in-class examples to kind of give you a flavor for what it really looks like in the day-to-day. So the first is, what is purpose? And does anyone here have experience with, purpose or cause marketing, corporate responsibility?
No, but they have to incorporate in their media relations plan,
Great.
in which they have to learn about it, because they have to make sure that they understand it professionally to prepare themselves.
Great. I'll definitely be sure to address that from a media perspective. But I'm sure if you look at all of these words, if you look at all of the words, you've probably heard some of these. So responsibility, citizenship, cause marketing, shared value. There's all these terms that are thrown out into this world where the umbrella is now called purpose. And it's really simple, and I like to think of your individual purpose. So why do you exist? What is your mission as a person? And you can easily translate that to a business. So purpose in the business sense is what is the mission of the business and why do you exist to serve society? It's pretty simple. And it's not just a mission statement or a commitment of values or an alignment with a social cause. It is how you live and breathe your purpose, starting at the top of what you stand for as a company, and then how it's embedded throughout the organization. So throughout the employee experience, your communication strategies, through media relations, how are you, if you're a client services organization, how you're reaching your clients. You probably go to Target or to Walmart and you see those two organizations expressing their values and how they're committed to society. So cause really started quite a long time ago in the 1800s with the start of Rockefeller when he hired his first philanthropic manager. And that was the most basic essence of what we saw as purpose. So he decided, I have so much money, I need to give it away to society. And of course there's the tax benefit. And then over time you saw the industry and this practice area start to evolve. So in the 50s you saw GE become the first company to match employee donations to a cause. In the 90s you saw, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, the first cause brand. The early 90s with Avon. And I have that in a few slides. And then in the early 2000s, we saw the Go Red for Women campaign, which is arguably the most successful cause marketing and fundraising campaign in history. And then in the last 10 to 15 years, the rise of corporate responsibility, and what is now in the past 2 to 3, the rise of purpose. And you hear purpose everywhere. It's such a buzzword, but it really does have meaning in the marketplace. So we saw those terms on a few slides before, and I like to just caveat, what some of the most basic terms mean, which I'm happy to we can discuss more as we go on in the lecture. But the first is corporate purpose and the idea of corporate citizenship. And this is what you see prevalent in so many industries. It's a long-term, multi-dimensional strategy that aligns business and social purpose within an organization. So it's not just about saying X company is committed to a cause or X company is committed to a nonprofit. It's looking at a range of issues and saying what's material to the business. So what issue matters. So if you're a target, you are thinking about worker rights, education, and then the societal impact. So how are you impacting society that is a little bit more disconnected from the business? Your brand purpose is, you have like the corporate and then you have the brand level, which is one step down, and that might be more of a marketing type promotion or a media relations campaign that's then tied back to the company's core purpose. And then nonprofit purpose, which I'll touch on a little bit, but I've kept, for the purposes of time and presentation, I've kept it mostly focused on for-profit companies, but nonprofit purpose is the same premise. What does your organization not only stand for, not only what is your mission statement, but how do you live out your mission statement? What is your brand? How do people feel about your brand? Who are you targeting? So in the case of the American Lung Association, it's women between 50 and 65, because they're the ones who are most at risk for lung cancer. So it's getting very narrow into what the company stands for, or the nonprofit stands for. So I like this. So you can see that purpose is really multifaceted, and it doesn't exist within one term. So you don't look at one company and say like they're doing purpose in the right way. It really exists. So it exists on a spectrum. So if you're looking at it from, starting on the brand level, so very much like how you look at, Pepsi, all the way to how you look at a Nestle, which owns many different brands. And cause-related marketing is what I would say most people are familiar with. And it's, cause marketing, cause promotions. When a brand wants to promote a cause tied to its business, they might do a cause-related marketing. So if you think of Whole Foods, and if you go to Whole Foods and you see that they're raising money for women's empowerment, partnering with Vital Voices, you can, or actually I'll take CVS because they're a little bit easier. Every month CVS does a different campaign focused on a nonprofit. It could be Stand Up to Cancer, the American Lung Association, the American Heart Association. And when you check out, they ask you to submit, $1, $3, or $5. Everyone has been prompted, I would assume, for that, to donate funds. So that would be an example of a cause-related
like
marketing
Abercrombie.
campaign. Sorry?
Abercrombie do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
They change every month, and yes,
Exactly.
they tell us to round $1
Yeah.
to $1.
You see it everywhere. You're probably being asked for money every day in your
yeah.
shopping experience.
It's just not a problem.
Yeah. And
Rounding
it's not
to
a problem.
$1 is not a big deal.
For sure. And, I wouldn't say that business is expected to do a cause promotion, but it is one of the most simple ways for their own consumers to understand that they care about society. The next level is cause branding, and I'll go a little bit more in depth on PNC, but cause branding is when a company aligns itself to one or few issues. So they're not saying we're only going to do a marketing campaign for a month to raise $1 million. They're saying here, we're committed into this long term. It might be 3 years, it could be 10 years. In the case of PNC, it's been 20 plus. And PNC is saying we're committed to early childhood education, and we're making that what we want to be known for throughout our business and throughout society. Corporate responsibility and sustainability is even one level deeper. And it could also be seen as a kind of a thread throughout all of these. And you've heard of corporate responsibility. It's most commonly associated with purpose. But at its true form, it's what is the company doing to socially responsibly report back to its shareholders and its stakeholders. So what are they doing from a social perspective? Could be their employees, could be their shareholders. What are they doing from a sustainability perspective? So are they recycling? Are they carbon free? How are they addressing the United Nations goals? And then what are they doing from a governance perspective? You know, do they have equal pay? Do they have equal representation of color and gender on their boards? What does their structure look like? So it's holding these companies responsible, and they do that through annual corporate responsibility reports. And then lastly, creating shared value is a term that came from Michael Porter and Mark Kramer out of FSG, which is a consulting firm. And it's the idea that companies can create products that equally benefit society and business. And Nestle does this really well. They've kind of taken it on their own, and it's become their signature. It's become embedded throughout their organization, throughout all of their product lines. So if you think of Nestle Waters, if you think of Purina, they all have to ladder back up to this platform that says, you know, we're going to create products that are equally beneficial for both parties. I'm not going to spend much time there because it's very complicated, but this is the idea of, you know, purpose is a spectrum. Any questions?
Where would companies like Patagonia and Lush fall on this spectrum?
Yeah, so I don't know as much about Lush, but Patagonia, of course. You know, they have deep CSR capabilities, but they're really aligning. They're basically doing a hybrid.
Okay.
If you think of like their cause brand, you know, they're really taking on a lot of social justice issues with the parks, with their products. So it's not necessarily like one or the other, because you have them doing cause branding, they're aligning with social justice issues. They're being very responsible in their business practices, but you could also argue through their is it common threads?
Yeah.
Is their recyclable line is creating shared value.
Okay.
Because they're taking product, for those who aren't familiar, you can recycle your Patagonia through them, and then they resell it online for a lower cost.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I guess it's not mutually exclusive.
Okay.
And this is why it's not mutually exclusive. Because Avon is an interesting example. It's arguably the company that brought cause to the marketplace. Avon, the makeup company, in the early 90s, they said, you know, we really want to stand for breast cancer and for women's empowerment. And I like using this slide because it shows you how you can layer on, not at once, but over time, all of these different programs that make like the holistic purpose spectrum or citizenship spectrum as we have on this slide. So it starts, I'll just give a quick high level, it starts with strategic philanthropy. And this is, you know, how are we going to use our funds as a corporation to impact, in this case it was breast cancer. So we're giving it to the Avon Foundation for Women, and they also fundraise through employees and their business partners. And they're investing in research and science, and then in nonprofits who are also on the ground, because this is a corporate foundation. They do cause marketing campaigns, as we talked about, you know, give $1, give $5, and they did this with Footworks. In this case, if you go into a store, and Unilever does this really well as well, if you go into a store and you see, you know, the box has, you know, like Save Our Planet, for every purchase, $1 goes to World Wildlife Fund. It's the same type idea. So it's called like percent of sale. They hosted events, which goes back to aligning with a cause. They built a cause brand that when you look at Avon, you feel that the company, yes, they're a makeup brand, but a lot of people looked at them as a breast cancer research provider. Through their CSR program, they did breast cancer domestic violence and environmental initiatives. And then their shared value platform was women's empowerment. They exist in society to serve women because they have makeup and because they're donating a portion of their proceeds back to a female cause. So the question is, why give away money for the sake of giving away money? And the business case is really important because in our economic environment, so many companies are focused on revenue, income, making money, retaining their employees, not necessarily giving away millions of dollars to a cause. But the reality is that consumers have such high expectations to express their mission and their purpose. There's really no business can kind of hide under the covers from aligning with the cause in today's market. Maybe the startup community. So I have, 4 of the, I would say the most prominent business case rationales, and the first is to enhance reputation. And this is research that the firm that I work at we conduct a study every year on the state of purpose, and I believe these are last year's results. So of companies that have purpose embedded in their organization at some level, at a high level, so it could be like a corporate responsibility program, a cause brand. 92% of Americans have a more positive image of that company. 87% are more likely to trust them, and 88% are likely to be more loyal to that company. So it's clear that consumers are paying attention. You're paying attention to Abercrombie when you're walking into the store and they're asking you to donate money. You probably don't even realize how organizations are aligning with causes because it's everywhere. It's also used to secure and retain top talent. And we've seen this more and more, that CSR doesn't live, in essence, like in a business line anymore. It doesn't live in the supply chain. A lot of the clients that I work with in particular, it either lives under marketing or it lives under HR, because they're looking at these programs and they're seeing how their employees are reacting, that their employees want to get involved in volunteer efforts. They want to give back to not only their community, but their employees during times of need. So there's programs that they're building to help them. So 58% of the respondents on the survey consider CSR initiatives when deciding where they want to work. 70% are more loyal if they can contribute to environmental and social causes. And then 74% say their job is more fulfilling. So they're not just going to work to do their job, they're going to work to also serve society. So leveraging competitive advantage, it's similar to reputation, but what we're saying here is that when you're looking at 2 products and one of them has an affiliation with a cause, whether you know that they have an affiliation with a cause or it says it directly on that product, 89% of brands are willing to switch. And I always use like the Tide example, and we'll get to that in a little bit later too. But Tide does a really good job of supporting the World Wildlife Fund and Nature Conservancy and one other ocean nonprofit. And they often brand one of their lines of detergent with that cause. And P&G, their parent company, has really seen success, and when you align the cause, their purchase intent goes up. And then license to operate is really important too, and this is the idea that when you're a corporation, companies are expected to give back to their local community. And it's not just giving dollars back for the sake of giving dollars back, but it's in a strategic way that is relevant to their business, relevant to their employees. It might be relevant to to drive business for their executives. Great. Any questions? So that was like the theory of purpose and how it exists in society, and I want to get on the next couple slides a little bit more tactical into how you actually approach executing some of these programs. Because even as a practitioner, like your purpose could be way out high in the sky, and it's hard to like bring yourself down and say like, what does it actually mean for the business, and what does it mean for all these partnerships that they're creating? So these are I'm going to present 3 practice areas that my firm does, but all the other firms who specialize in purpose also do. And the first is purpose brand strategy. So it's, as I kind of started off with, like, what is your mission and why do you exist? And we go through this exercise to identify both the business and social objectives. So is it going to drive revenue? Is it going to drive reputation? Is it going to drive sales? And how? And then from the societal perspective, you know, who are you partnering with? How many individuals are you impacting? And what communities are you reaching within your target markets? So when we go through these exercises, we go through, you know, mission and purpose statement development, goal setting, making sure that purpose is not just siloed and outside of the organization, but it's embedded within the whole experience. And then using executives to amplify what their purpose is. So I'll give you an example. I'm working with a dialysis company now who is creating a foundation, and we just recently went through this exercise to look at, you know, what is kidney, the kidney care community focusing on in general, what are the trending topics, and how can we use, you know, a limited set of funds. You know, there's not endless money for all of these programs, to the best use of our dollars to really impact society in a meaningful way that excites employees, and that generates, you know, a positive halo of the organization. So the next one, and I like using this slide because it really kind of clarifies what CSR really is. It's the integration of the social and environmental practices within a company, so they can deliver and report on their benefits to their shareholders and to customers, but I would say more times than not, the opposite, you're not reading their CSR report. I'm reading their CSR reports of these companies, but the everyday consumer isn't. So when we go through a CSR practice, we look at what materials what issues are material to the business. So you might have like 5 to 9 that the company deeply cares about. So we'll do an assessment, which is often through stakeholder interviews. So we'll interview the CEO, we'll interview all the business line leads, and we'll draw out like what is meaningful for the business at this point. You know, where are they getting dinged by industry groups? Where are they getting targeted in the media? What is important for them to set goals around to be a better company to their employees and to the industry?
Are CSRs like available for like the public to read?
So for the companies that have CSR reports, you can read them online. Yeah, so I don't work on any CSR reports because I tend to work on the brand side, but you can go to any of these 3 and look at their CSR reports. Targets is really good in particular. Yeah, so you can see they have what's called a GRI index. It's called the Global Reporting Initiative. It's headquartered out of the Netherlands. And they are the industry standard for companies to align with. So if we have time, we can go into it, but there's a grid that looks at all of the company's business practices. So it would be like employee welfare, environment, stakeholder issues, governance, so like equal pay and equality, and it ranks, it's kind of like the North Star to making sure that all the companies are thinking about all of these different issues. And once you go through a GRI process, you get a ranking, and then you're ranked against your peers. And then lastly on this section, social impact, which is I think the most exciting out of all three, because it really gets to the heart of why so many of us go into this field. And it fits under, all of the practice areas that I talked about, but this is really about the societal impact. So a company has money, how are they going to invest in the communities where they live and work to make positive difference? So we'll go through exercises that, if we have clients who say, we want to refocus where we're investing our money, or we want to start investing our money, how are we going to do that? So we go through, we'll do like strategic philanthropy, community relations, which is the license to operate piece, and then developing strategic partnerships with organizations. So I'll take like Xylem, which is a water company. They're like a water infrastructure company. And a couple years ago we created, it's not called Waterworks, but it's something like Waterworks, where we brought clean water to developing countries. And it's a huge employee engagement initiative, and we're also aligning with nonprofits in the region. I'll also use that I don't have on this slide, is Unilever, as was mentioned earlier. I worked on Unilever for a few years on Vaseline. And at the onset of the project, Vaseline had really wanted to create its own cause campaign around giving Vaseline to those who need it most. And Vaseline is a clinically proven skin healer. You can put it on cuts, and it will heal your cuts over time. It's the only skin healer that is over the counter. So we said, where is it needed most? So we partnered with a nonprofit called Direct Relief to bring Vaseline into refugee camps in Africa. So that would be an example of social impact. So before I dive into some more tactics, I wanted to show 2 videos of examples of what purpose looks like in the marketplace. I don't know, has anyone seen this before? Okay. Has everyone seen it? So I would say that this is probably the most emotive example. And it was created by the Always brand 4 years ago. It won a ton of awards. I think it might be the most award-winning purpose campaign ever. But it really brought Always onto the map to show the everyday consumer what they stood for, and it's really transitioned the brand's image.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm gonna just give you some actions to do, and to see the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl. Aww.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, I don't know what it really, if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down because during that time they're already trying to figure themselves out. And when somebody says you hit like a girl, it's like, well, what does that mean? Because they think they're a strong person. It's kind of like telling them that they're weak and they're not as good as them.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swim like a girl?
Keep doing it because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball on time and you're still being first, you're doing it right. It doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that's not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm going to do it anyway. That's what they should do.
If I asked you to run like a girl now, would you do it differently?
I would run like myself.
Would you like a chance to redo it?
Why can't run like a girl also mean win the race?
Yeah, so it's really such a, I think this is a stellar campaign. So as I mentioned, it won like the top awards in PR. It won like a Cannes Lion. I think it won 4 or 5. So you can see why. It's just so well done. And when Always pushed this out, it was throughout all their social channels. It went out to all of their employees. They did speaking on this idea of like a girl, and it really took off. And I believe they did some product placement, but you can see that when you watch the video, you understand that Always is committed to women's empowerment, to equality, and they've continued to do that. So that's more on the, it's a really a cause campaign. But I wanted to show one other video, which is an example of like a cause brand, and it also has some deep CSR ties on the back end. But this is Tide. They have a program that basically brings an RV. It's called Loads of Hope, and it brings an RV type vehicle to disaster relief communities in the U.S. That allows individuals who are affected by hurricanes, earthquakes, to wash their clothes for free using Tide. So it's a great way for them to authentically and uniquely use their product during times of disaster.
One of the most inspiring, heartwarming global initiatives called Loads of Hope has arrived in Trinidad and Tobago. Now in partnership with Standards and AMCO, Tide introduces its universal initiative, Loads of Hope, locally. Standard has mounted wash centers, where residents in all kinds of communities can have their clothes freely washed and dried.
Saturday morning when we got up and saw all the heart-wrenching pictures of hundreds of thousands of people who've lost everything in the flood, Standard, we couldn't imagine what it was like to actually go through such a tragedy. So we sat together and thought of what solution we could also bring to the problem, along with all the other Trinidadians who have come to the rescue and stepped up and provided food, clothes, and that kind of stuff.
Government Primary School, together with Standards and AMCO, the Tide PNG team has decided to launch their Loads of Hope promotion, which is done globally to help with the flood victims that has happened over the past weekend. So basically what we're going to do is provide Tide and liquid detergent to the flood victims that have been affected affected for the entire year so that they can find their way.
We just wanted to provide a practical solution to do something and to find a need where people have use for the items. And everybody thought about water and housing and shelter, but you know what? People need to wash their clothes. We partnered with AMCO and they have generously provided their washing detergents and items for people to dry their clothes and so on, and they will be replenishing as the weeks go on. So it's a joint effort and it's all part of what the group does, provide solutions for persons in need.
Loads of Hope, a global initiative of Tide, now in partnership locally with Standard.
So I put in the wrong video. However, so you didn't see the RV, but that was a great example of an extension of a long-standing campaign where they then bring it into another country and they utilize a local partner. But they do have an RV. It's like branded Tide, it's orange, it's great. And they send employees into the disaster relief areas to help people wash their clothes. How do I get back? So, any questions?
I don't have okay, kind of a question. So the always, like, I remember seeing that, and like, because I feel like you're right, it was like pushed on so many social channels, and I feel like I'm a girl, so I can like connect to the brand more. But like Tide, like, I wash my clothes, but I like didn't see that anywhere. So like, I guess you can talk about it like at the end, but like, how do we know about what these companies are doing if it's not like blatantly pushed on your social channels or like turned into like a commercial? Like, how do you know, like, other than Patagonia, like what these companies are like socially doing?
Yeah, so there's companies that do it well and then don't do it as well.
Yeah.
Patagonia, most people, whether you wear it or not, because of their stance on social justice and because social justice issues are so hot right now, they get so much coverage. And Patagonia promotes it very heavily in their store. So if you're walking past the store, you know what they're standing for. Tide and you're right, like, it's a multi-channel approach. So when you think about it in an integrated way, you can't just push it out on social. You can't just put it on a product for the people who buy it. It needs to be throughout the entire experience. Tide in particular, I'll touch on the disaster relief piece. P&G, as their parent company, does a ton of ads that are purposeful. Gillette just did one about be the man or the best man, which we could talk about that too. It got a ton of flack in like the Me Too movement around women's empowerment, and then they go put an ad about male men. So, but P&G will put out a lot of ads, especially around the Super Bowl, the Olympics, which you've probably seen like the mom ads, for them standing as a company, not necessarily at the brand level. What Tide does really well is that product placement. So they will partner with, like, as I mentioned, like the Nature Conservancy, and they'll do a wrap on their detergent. They do promote it on social, but it's, I think, a little bit less so, although that would be the best practice.
Kevin, do you think that's because their audience may not be on social as much as people like in your age group?
No, I think their audience, it's not the most emotional brand. Tide specifically, P&G does have some emotional brands. It's more of like the territory that they have on social media isn't exclusively purpose or exclusively cause related. But you'll see it at key moments throughout the year. So you'll see it on like International Women's Day. Like, I don't know for sure, but I'm almost positive P&G and all of their brands did something on International Women's Day. Or when a hurricane strikes. They will most likely be talking about Tides of Hope and how they're reaching, they did a lot around Hurricane Katrina specifically and mobilizing the unit. So one thing when we think of the license to operate, Tides of Hope is in particular addressing that business case. companies are expected during international and domestic disasters to donate money and where possible donate product, but most importantly donate money to the Red Cross, Feeding America, Direct Relief, which is an emergency assistance program. P&G does donate money, but they mostly use Tides of Hope as the alternative to reaching communities. So if you think about it, like it doesn't, they probably spend 1 to 2 million on this program to like get it off the ground, but they're not spending that per year. So they're offsetting costs by having this campaign that is impacting local communities, but it more importantly looks like they're doing something really big. So, yeah, if that makes sense. Other questions?
I have a question about, I think you mentioned Nestle.
Yep.
Because I have a bad picture of it. I mean, growing up in the 80s, people boycotted because of the whole breast milk substitution. And then you read about all the strikes all over the world that the workers did, like in Latin America or Africa.
Yeah.
So I think it was very interesting that you mentioned it. How are they doing now? Do you think they're changing that image?
The image is
Do they
definitely
have fair
changing.
trade coffee, for example?
I believe so. They have the cafe practices that are aligned with like Starbucks, and I hate to say it, but Keurig. So Nestle in particular, so it's kind of a philosophy of business. So the philosophy is that all of their products, Nestle has like so many businesses, that all the products should have equal benefit to society and the business. I think their water company does it probably the best. They do a lot of water recycling in Africa and water stewardship initiatives. That also drives sales for the company. But yeah, I actually work on Purina, so we can talk about that more if you want. But yeah, I would also argue there's some Purina products, and I disagree with Corda, but some Purina products that may not necessarily be the best for society, but they also have ones that are. So it's kind of offsetting the negative.
I was going to say, in terms of companies like Nestle that has just an unbelievable amount of brands underneath it, isn't that an offset for companies, or for, in a way that companies can manipulate? People probably boycott Nestle, but Nestle, if you really realistically go into it, it's almost impossible for you to boycott Nestle because of the amount of products they have everywhere. So isn't that, I don't know, seeing it from a company's perspective, having that a lot of brands is for you to enable you to be able to switch an image between, if one brand is suffering, you can just switch it into another brand, and then a lot of people don't have that information about the company and knowing that how much brands it has, or if that brand is under Nestle or not. How do you see that from a perspective of how can I say brand issues and how can I say, if a company has two brands, one of them is standing for something and the other brand is just doing the opposite?
Yeah, it's tricky. Nestle in particular is very tricky because they are so large, and because they're European and they have they're headquartered out of Switzerland, but they have what's called like Nestle in the market, which are like the local hubs that kind of own a lot of the messaging. And I would say, when we're thinking about, I don't work on the purpose side of Nestle, however, it's still, we think of that in all of the communications that we do, is how does our action within one brand affect the other brands that we own. So we have to, it's very careful balance to make sure that we don't contradict another brand that either Nestle owns or even a sub-brand within the brand. Because Nestle Purina is like the corporate brand, but then there's tons of sub-brands. I believe there's 17 that all have different philosophies. So there's like the low-end dog food, and there's the really high-end dog food that you probably don't even know that Purina owns. So yeah, I think it's very careful consideration. Best practice is that you have your corporate purpose that we stand for women's equality or women's empowerment or gun rights, parks, and the environment, and that the sub-brands have some sort of element that rolls back to that. So like Unilever, now they have what's called like the Sustainable Living Plan. That's right, yeah, the Sustainable Living Plan. That basically says, you know, we want to be the best socially responsible business in the market, and then each sub-brand of Unilever has their own cause that they own uniquely. So like Dove Real Beauty that everyone knows. Unilever or Vaseline has the Healing Project, bringing Vaseline to refugee camps. Axe has, it is like some sort of male, like gender stereotypes. I think that's still their cause. That's like the last one to like be fully built out, but they should be succinct. From a business standpoint, like it's very tricky when you buy a brand that doesn't have a positive image. I wouldn't say that the holding companies necessarily like switch ones in and out, but they will promote one heavier than the other if they have that issue. It's tricky. That's the answer. Okay. So I'm going to get, if there's not any other questions, I don't know, how much time do I have?
What usually we do is we have time, usually speak as long as you speak a little more, and then time for questions.
Okay.
And then maybe if individual students had questions, you know, whatever is
I'm almost done.
you know, and we have had 2 students come in since everybody introduced themselves. So will you introduce yourself and explain where you're from?
Yes. So I'm Vivian, and I come from a background of advertising, banking, and fashion.
Awesome.
Diversity.
Yeah.
But I had my master's in marketing here, and then I find the communication really interesting, and I'm doing communication now. So and I'm getting closer to applying it to business that I'm gonna be soon really starting on my own. And when you talked about CSR, and as soon as I came in, it really talked to something that I was debating for the whole day today, about the possibility of having a woman, a lady, partnering with me. And I was really thinking that of course I'm convinced of her business model and everything, but what got me closer to saying that I could cope with that lady is that she had already achieved in her business, she has done 3 major steps in as little as she is, in a limited business that she runs. She has conducted 3 activities over 3 years in a row, every year for a different purpose, in CSR. She did a walk, she did lighting for some streets. So, the third thing that she did was serving meals. I mean, but I could say that this was the motto that told me I could work with that lady, because it speaks to things that I would also like to do.
Yeah, it connects to your values.
And it's not, I clearly understood that you were talking about, it's not art for the sake of art, right?
Yep.
It's maybe both.
Yep.
It's a mission that we'd like to have, but also it's something that gets the community to look at us in a better perspective, right?
Yeah.
And buy a product or...
Yeah, that was a nice story.
Will you introduce yourself?
My name is Estefania. I'm a grad student. I studied political science for my bachelor's, and I'm getting my master's in communications. And what I want to do is work in political advertising and market campaigns.
It's a great time.
I'm from Equatorial Guinea.
Nice.
A small country in Central Africa.
Susie, we have a really
Warmer than
interesting class
Yeah.
that's international in nature, which I love.
Yeah, that's
Everybody, you didn't even mention your country, where you're from.
I'm from Lebanon.
Lebanon. So,
And I live, yeah, I've been here for 4 years and a half now.
So we have a very interesting class from all around the world, learning about these approaches that we have in American business,
Yeah.
which is really important. And they are going to have to include some of this. And they're doing a media relations plan for a client and trying to incorporate in that, rather than take an exam at the end of this course, incorporate in their plan all of these different elements we've talked about. Like, for instance, the data analytics that Andrea talked about, and now what you're talking about is extremely important. So I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit, and how not only it serves a purpose for the corporation and for the consumers who want to purchase the products or or support the brand, but also it makes for interesting stories in the press.
So I would say at the highest level, media for most clients is like the ultimate end result. But in like today's media landscape, it's really hard to get earned media because there's so many competing stories, because of the administration in Washington taking up a lot of airtime. It's very challenging. I think when we build a media relations plan, we look through everything through the lens of purpose, which doesn't necessarily mean cause or nonprofit, but what is the mission that we're trying to accomplish, what is the value that we're trying to address from the business side, and what is the meaning on the society end as well. So like, how does it relate to the end reader when they're reading a story about X product? What does it mean for them? One, I guess, and maybe specific questions would be helpful, and I could address a little bit more. But greenwashing is something that we're always thinking about to avoid, because if the company isn't standing for an issue in a unique way and doesn't have what I call like the back end to support it, it could really harm the brand. And I'll use P&G as an example. With Gillette, their most recent advertisement around toxic masculinity, where has everyone seen that advertisement?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, so for those who haven't seen it, it basically talks about how men are
Traditionally
like pushed down in society and have to act one way, and that the boys of tomorrow are having like adverse effects on how we've treated men in society, more or less. I guess it's kind of subjective how you look at it, but that's how I read it.
Can I say they're trying to tell the boys of tomorrow not to do what their fathers did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's looking at it as how do you empower like boys into successful positions, right? More or less. And P&G often puts out these ads that are very emotional and thought-provoking, but they got really criticized because of the Me Too movement, because there's so many companies that are, as you're seeing, like we see it every day, like another scandal, another CEO resigns, another company puts out an advertisement about women's empowerment, and then P&G goes and does the exact opposite, where they already are being criticized for some of their governance issues around pay and female representation. But what at least in my industry, in the cause world, P&G makes billions of dollars, and they donate very, very small amount of money back. Like, they are one of the smallest givers in terms of their charitable giving dollars. And they put $1 million into the Boys and Girls Club following. It was really in reaction to this advertisement, because of the negative backlash they were getting. And I think it's like number 20th most disliked YouTube video. It's either in 2019 or, I don't think it's in history, but it's probably 2019 or this month.
So do you think that happened because their team, their communications team, didn't scan the environment and think about the external environment and what was going on with the Me Too movement? How could they have made that blunder? I guess maybe I should back up a little bit. Do you happen to know P&G has an internal communications department and internal marketing department, or do they use an agency? Or do you know?
Yeah,
They
so
both.
they have a pretty robust marketing agency. They have a few social impact, like internal consultants who work in, Gillette is headquartered here.
Right.
In South Boston, so they have a few people in that office, and then they use Gray as their advertising agency.
Do you know who did this campaign? Was it Gray or the internal?
Yeah, Gray did the campaign. They did hire a female award-winning director to direct it. You know, I'm sure like they're very smart. I know the person who runs the group, and she is very intelligent, and I think it's more of they wanted to take a stand, and they were willing to take the risk, and because they're P&G, they can, and they want to provoke these conversations in the marketplace. It's more, I guess my point is like you need, regardless of what the message is on the campaign side, you need to make sure that you are supporting, that you're putting your money where your mouth is, and they aren't doing that.
I was going to say, do you think it was because the donation was reactionary, not like a proactive, we do this on a regular basis? That
The
it was
donation
just
was
kind of like,
reactionary.
it was empty.
Yeah. So there was like 2 large negative reactions. The first one was around the sentiment in the Me Too movement and talking about men.
Right.
Which like you can claim is a good thing or a bad thing. You know, if you look at it from the boys' perspective and helping youth, like sure, like that's a great message to send. It could have been done in a different way, and that's personal opinion. And then the second one was, you know, P&G is talking about helping, you know, the boys of tomorrow, but they're not actually doing anything. They're just spending a lot of money on an advertisement that makes it look like they're doing something. And then there was even, once they did put out the $1 million, there was criticism that you're only putting out $1 million.
Yeah.
So when, you know, there's organizations putting out 10,
They were empty and shallow pockets.
Yeah. So from a media perspective, so that's why I bring it up, from the media perspective, when you lead with, you know, purpose can be integrated, but if that's going to be a key message, you need to make sure that, you know, the company is really standing behind it and is doing something.
And not only the company standing behind it, but it will resonate with the public in a positive way. It surprised me that they did that they weren't aware. I mean, there was so much media coverage of the Me Too movement and so many issues that arose over and over and over again. I was surprised that they still did that in light of all of these stories.
Yeah, and I think a good example is Fearless Girl, that State Street Global Advisors did. Although they did, is everyone familiar with Fearless Girl?
Yeah.
The statue in New York?
Well, raise your hand if you don't know what he's talking about, because some of the international students might not know.
Yeah, so in 2007, I think.
Just before the 2008 recession.
No, it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago. Sorry, did I say 2007? I meant 2017.
Yeah, it was right after
the
election.
That's 2017.
Difference.
Yes, it was. It was after the election. So, State Street Global Advisors, which is like the asset manager for State Street. Yes. They had recently hired a new CMO, and the CMO wanted to take a stand and really, you know, prove his mark, make his mark on the map within the company. So they said, you know, International Women's Day is like the next milestone moment, and given the newly elected president, this is the perfect moment for us to take a stand. State Street also has 17 female executives, and they have for years been championing women's empowerment within the organization. They've changed their pay practices after like a pretty public lawsuit that they had a few years ago. And the State Street corporate CMO is a woman, and they're very passionate about the cause. So they said, naturally this fits, like we're investing in nonprofits, but we also have a commitment that we haven't launched yet to make, all of our to make sure that all of our portfolio companies are equally represented of gender on all of their boards. Because State Street, not to get complicated, but like State Street owns 2,000 or so companies, or invests in 2,000 or so companies where they have control over the boards or influence. So on International Women's Day 2017, they released this statue of a girl she was expressive with her hands on her hips facing the Wall Street Bull, which was a very dramatic moment to fight for women's empowerment. I think they also have a video, which I would watch after this class. It's great.
Yeah, you should. You should look it up on
Yeah.
YouTube and watch the video. Go
So
ahead.
State Street also got criticized for that, saying that they weren't doing enough to support women internally and on the boards. But I would say it's also subjective, and from my opinion, that was a really good example of using that moment to make a very creative stand, launch a campaign at a moment in time that generated like so much coverage. It was everywhere.
Yes.
You couldn't go onto social media without seeing it.
Yes.
But also like make change and make the point that it's not an on and off switch, that like one day you have no representation on a board and then the next day it's equal, that it's really about the journey, and you have to communicate the journey.
Right.
So.
It's a very dramatic image, and it did get a monumental media coverage. Does anyone have any more questions for Kevin? No more questions? Do you all feel you learned a lot? So what do you do? Say thank you. Say thank you. Thank you very, very much, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, of course.
Very nice. I'm surprised that we don't have more questions, though, more comments. Did you want to mention up here the last slide? Is this your last slide, or just let them read it?
Yeah. What was I gonna say on this slide? Yeah. So this was like diving one level deeper into how you find purpose. So I guess I'll end on this slide. Purpose isn't something you just think of or a CEO thinks of and says like, this is what we're gonna focus on. There's actually a strategic approach to finding out what cause a company should focus on. And it starts with diagnosing the opportunity. So you would look at the organization internally and see what causes have they focused on in the past, if any, what their business leaders care about, where their industry is going, and assess what they can uniquely and what assets they can uniquely bring to market that you would be able to leverage in a campaign or a program. And then you look externally and first look at what are all of the competitors doing. So what issues are they focusing on? What campaigns are they running? What kind of media attention are they getting? Are they using celebrities? So what tactics are they using? And then once you have an idea, you look at the issue space. So if you're looking at hunger, I want to say like Kroger, because they have a robust hunger program. So like a Kroger or a Stop and Shop or a Whole Foods will look at what does the hunger space look like? What NGOs and nonprofits are in the market? What are they focusing on? What kind of programs are they running? Where are the opportunities? And then when you get to the second part, it's once you've sold in the programs and the initial focus, it's really defining what the purpose is. So it should be emotional, authentic, compelling for all of the stakeholder groups. That has, as we've talked about, like the business and societal impact. So how many people are we focusing on? What target markets are we focusing on? And how are we going to make this come to life? And then lastly, it's really breathing your purpose throughout everything you do. It doesn't just sit there in a bucket and you pull it out when you need to use it during a time of crisis, which so many companies are doing, and it's frustrating. It really should be integrated throughout the entire organization and activated through everything you do. So like social media, marketing, email communications.
Great, thank you. Did you have a question?
Not really a question, but like it's like a comment or like discussion, like if you guys want to chime in or anything. But purpose, like for these companies like P&G that already exist, like for them to want to do a campaign, like purpose is like behind it. But like in our other class, we're talking about organizations. In my organizations class, we're talking about Ela Eason, who kind of brought ethnic dolls to like the surface and like kind of made it popular. And like the purpose there was like her son didn't have any dolls that looked like him. She was a black woman and he had no dolls or like action figures that looked like him. So like the purpose behind that was to like give kids that look differently like self-confidence and like representation and stuff. So I'm just like wondering, and like I don't know, it's like a question for like everyone, whoever could answer this. Like do like companies that are starting up, like do they like start a company with purpose in mind, or like does purpose come after? Like is that a question? I don't know. Like I'm just wondering, like
I get what you're saying.
like
I get what
with
you're saying.
P&G, like they want to put out a campaign, and then they're like, okay, let's think about the purpose behind this, but like, you think it's both?
Right, because Ela was like, okay, I'm a woman of color, I'm raising a child of color, and he looks around and he doesn't see anyone like him as far as, the dolls he plays with, and that can be alienating to a child. So her purpose was representation off the bat. But then there are companies like Lush and Ben & Jerry's and Patagonia that are listening to their consumers and to just, they're taking the temperature of the social environment, and they're hearing that, transgender rights matter, and that gay rights matter, and that the environment is important, and the earth is dying and we need to save it. And so I think it's an ever evolving thing, and I feel like a lot of people start companies and they're like, I want my company to stand for something, and then it evolves into a company that stands for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I would say that's very spot on. A working purpose.
I was paying attention.
Yeah.
Took a lot of notes.
Yeah, so it's either like purpose, cause or purpose is part of the DNA, or it's an extension. In P&G's case, it's an extension. But if you were to think of like all the examples that you mentioned, or like a Warby Parker, like they started because they recognized the need to create cheaper glassware, but they also wanted to find a way to give back, and they've been doing the BOGO program since they started, where they give a pair of glasses for every purchase to, I think it's all ages in Africa.
It's like Tom's shoes.
Yeah,
or Tom's.
That's what I was
Tom's
saying.
shoes is another example.
Like it can be your differentiator as a company.
Yes.
Because Tom's shoes is, in my opinion, is one of the ugliest shoes ever made. But they grew up. They expanded because of that. Everybody related Tom's shoes for that purpose, and if you believed in that cause, you started buying it even though you didn't like the design.
Yeah, I bought a pair. I didn't like the way they looked, but I bought them. And they're comfortable. Someone had a hand up over here. Go.
Well, I just have to comment. I think it's great. In general, I'm from human rights organization. I'm from Amnesty International. So I think it's amazing that organizations like us, we work with justice questions. But I love the fact that profit organizations are actually getting spun on that questions as well. So hopefully, maybe in the future, they don't even need organizations like us. But I just think it's great.
Yeah, it's, I mean, and today, I guess you can thank the political administration. Like, companies have to tackle social issues because of the expectations from their customers and their employees. Like, you see it all the time, every time there's a shooting, or there's some sort of, political challenge or social justice challenge, there's companies who are standing up. So like Ben & Jerry's and gay marriage, or Patagonia and the environment.
Right.
Or
Kevin,
Aria.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Did I interrupt? Go ahead.
No.
I just would have one question that maybe I'm asking for not just the students here, but maybe other students who couldn't make it. Does Porter Novelli have any internships, and do you have any in your area of the business?
Yes.
Do you want to tell the students a little bit about the process? Do they have to apply?
I don't know what the process is. The process is I have business cards, and you can email me if you're interested.
Thank you.
We have interns. We hire them. And I don't know when we hire them, but I know we do, and I always pass along people's resumes. I know we're hiring entry-level positions right now in my group.
Thank you.
So you can find that on our website.
Because in order to finish their master's degree here, they have to either have to do an internship, or they have to write a master's thesis, or they take the comprehensive exam, or they do a special project.
Okay.
And oftentimes, the students who are international are really interested in trying an internship with an American company.
For sure.
Okay?
Yeah, and I think you can connect with, I'll give you my business card, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And if it's not an internship at an agency, I'm always asked for nonprofit internships as well.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So even nonprofits, with some of your network, with who you work with, through
Yep.
mayor's office and other groups that you're involved with? Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Unless somebody else has another
I
question.
think there's 3 questions.
Yeah.
I'll
I
let
have a
Neil go
question
first.
about nonprofits. So how do you work with nonprofits?
Yeah,
Do you connect these big companies to like small nonprofits?
it depends. So I would say my agency had larger nonprofit clients in the past. So we started, I didn't start it, but Go Red for Women with the American Heart Association was born out of my agency. And I worked on the American Lung Association's Lung Force campaign. So they're like big nonprofits that almost act as companies. So we'll support them in mostly fundraising campaigns. I have a few nonprofit clients that I support on corporate partnerships where I'm helping them approach companies for cause marketing campaigns or fundraising initiatives. And then on the other side, for my corporate clients, yes, sometimes it's doing communications around their existing programs. It could be finding new nonprofit partnerships. It could be finding new focus areas.
So I'm doing an internship at Thompson Island.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of it? Yeah. Yeah, and I was like thinking of how to connect it with some kind of organization, but I feel like it's very local because it's only like Boston Public Schools, and I don't know.
Yeah, what's the nonprofit?
It's you're asking what it's about?
Yeah, no, I know what it is. What's it called? The full name?
Thompson Island Outward Bound.
Yeah, Outward
Education
Bound.
Center.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, and Outward Bound is interesting because you're kind of siloed. You're actually on an island.
Yeah.
And they bring like the high school kids to the island in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a community approach. I've talked to them actually in my previous job about giving them money. My former colleague is on their board. So it's, using their board members and their network to try to find money.
Yeah, so it's mostly like local companies, and
exactly.
They have the gala in April actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much, Kevin. We really appreciate you coming down. Oh, there was another question? I didn't see. I'm sorry, I didn't see.
That's okay. So my roommate's actually the CSR person for her job. She does B Corp stuff, and she has the same background as you. And I was wondering if you went into poli-sci and comm thinking that this is what you wanted to do, or if it was just kind of by happenstance, kind of serendipitously, that you were like, oh, well, this is a beautiful marriage of my two passions, and this will work out.
I actually went into my freshman year thinking I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. And I decided I didn't want to do that because I actually thought about it and I didn't care enough about the stories that I was reporting on when I was a student. And I said, okay, I want to go into politics. So then I was kind of going to be, I entered in the governor's office and did like some political press communications. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I did some public affairs work. And then my last internship, this was my second to last internship in college, I applied to a PR firm in DC, wanting to go into government communications, and I didn't get selected for it. And they put me into the CSR group, and I didn't even know what CSR was. I kind of didn't know what the acronym stood for. And then it kind of just fell into place. I was really interested, like the topic then became trending, and it's kind of like the rest is history. I actually had a really good mentor in my internship after that, where I was really inspired. And I wanted to follow her path.
Great.
Do you have a question? I thought I saw a hand up over there.
All right.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone.
It's about 8 o'clock. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you.